Okay, this is gonna be an advanced VANOS video. I decided to make it because my problems were more serious than just a simple cleaning and soldering. Okay, so first of all, let me loosen everything I have. This is my workspace. The most important things, that Radio Shack soldering iron, CRC contact cleaner as such, and then you also have this, which is compressed air. Alright, so now we move towards here. That's my solenoid board. And as you can see, one of the solenoids is missing. That was my bad solenoid. What I had to do is take some desoldering braid, as such, took off as much solder as I could from the green PC board. PCB right there. There we go. And then I got my solenoid out. As you can see, I have one short pin and one longer pin, because the short pin is the original pin, and then the longer one is because the other pin broke. Again, I use category 5E wire. Okay, if you can see just barely there, the short pin has more epoxy plastic coating than the long one. That's because since my pin broke off into the epoxy, I had to take a Dremel. Okay, that's another tool that you will need. You will need a Dremel, and you will have to Dremel some epoxy out to do so. I used a very generic Dremel. It's an old one. And then my tools, I had to use this thing, which is just a cone sander bit, and then this sanding disc. It is not the cutting one, as you can see, because the back is paper backed, but it worked very well and cut the epoxy very well. What I did was then take the category 5E. I would pinch it as such with my pliers, and then I would start wrapping around, so I made a nice circle to stick around the little nub and I had left. And then finally, you will get a long enough pin so you can reattach everything to the PC board, and you'll be cooking again. Alright, things I learned along the road thanks to M5 board. You will need a multimeter. An auto-ranging one, a digital auto-ranging one would be the best. Of course, this is not a digital one, analog of course, and it is definitely not auto-ranging. It has 8 ranges. Okay, so what will happen is that you will need to learn how to measure the resistance in all these, and then you will need to measure the voltage if anything goes wrong there. Okay, so in terms of resistance, if all your connections are good and your resistors and solenoids are good, you will read about 4 ohms anywhere on this PC board. Okay, if you have a bad connection, which will read 0 ohms, you will have a shorted solenoid. Either this thing would be shorted or the resistor itself, and the resistors would be found right here. One there, one there, one there, one there. Okay, and then if your resistance is very, very, very high, what would happen is that you basically have a break in solder connections. In my case, since this is a very rudimentary multimeter, my resistance were read in only thousands of ohms, it wasn't very accurate. When I measured mine, these 3 good ones would read 0 ohms, which I would assume would be 4 ohms, because I couldn't get down to something that accurate. And this one would be reading in the 2000 ohms. So something was odd there. But then the M5 board members said that it wasn't high enough resistance, that it said that there was a break. So they had me do a voltage test. I applied a 9-volt battery to all of my solenoids. To my good ones, these three, I read 4.5 volts at the battery and the same voltage, 4.5, at the pins. And the pins I would be talking about would be here and here. There's an outer pin, which is where the battery directly feeds voltage to, and the inner pins, which goes directly to the solenoid. In my case, since I already bridged them, it would be the same voltage. But if they weren't bridged, you would want to measure the inner pins, because those go directly to the solenoid. Okay, and again, I had 4.5 volts to the good ones, 4.5 volts at the battery. To my bad solenoid, my battery would read 7 volts approximately. Again, this is very rudimentary. And this solenoid at the pins would also read 7. So there was something wrong there. What happened next was they told me to take out the solenoid, remove it off the little green board, and finally test just the individual resistance of this. Well, when testing the resistance, when removing, one of the pins broke, and I figured maybe that's a problem. It was a big problem. And then so I made a new pin, tested it. Resistance with just the solenoid was 0. I'm gonna assume it's 4 this time, because I mean, I can't, again, bad multimeter. And then, well, hopefully it was good. So now when I apply 9 volts to it, it does work. So my next step right now, since this solenoid is firing up again, I will put it back onto the board, put it back into the VANOS solenoid pack again, and I should be good to go with a running VANOS system and a running M5. Okay, a quick shot at how I'm testing the resistance. Of course, basically all you're going to see is that it goes to 0, because it should be 4 ohms, but I don't have enough accuracy. There you go. That was my bad one. Now, since I'm testing this not based on accuracy, because I don't know if it's actually 4 ohms, this is what my good ones show. Okay? That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. See? Same. And again, where I am testing, I will show you. The plug is on this side, so I'm taking my negative and hitting it on this side of the resistor, positive hitting it on this side of the resistor. And that's where I'm getting my resistance. You can also do it where, in this case, BMW has it colored weird. Black is the positive and yellow is the negative. Again, you can test it right here. Another way you can test it is if you flip it all the way over again, and then you go, let me move this again, and you shoot. Okay, you see these 3. Of course, the middle is the negative, and the outer ones are the positive, so I'm doing the top middle, and the top right outer. Whoops. There you go. You can test it that way.